Greetings and salutations. First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Levin and all the nice people at Llewellyn for inviting me to spend a little time with you here at LlewellynCon2024. My name is Stephen J. Rolfes, and I am coming to you from the lush tropical paradise of Cincinnati. And I am here to talk to you today about my new Llewellyn book. Here, let me get up my PowerPoint here. Beware the Banshees' Cry, the folklore and history of messengers of death. And you're probably wondering, why is he holding up a paper? Why doesn't he hold up the book? I'll tell you why I'm holding up the paper. Because the book is not coming out until September the 8th. However, it is my understanding that there is a modern miracle known as pre-ordering. I mention it only in passing. Now, let's delve into the world of the darkest and the gloomiest, most macabre denizen of the other world, the Banshee. You know, there's only two things that you can say for certain about a Banshee. Number one, in the spirit world, the Banshee is ladies' night out. Banshees are always female. They are also always connected to a certain family. And that family is always Irish. I mean, Irish going way back. I don't get one, I'm afraid. I'm German. And the other thing is that the message that the Banshee will give, the message is always the same. When you hear the cry on the winter night wailing outside the house, they always seem to stay outside. And you know someone in your family is going to die. Now, it might be someone right in the household with you. It might be an aunt, a cousin, an uncle, a brother or sister who lives in the United States. It could be anyone. And it might be you. But that's the only thing we can say for certain about banshees. Beyond that, things get a little fuzzy. For example, what the heck is a banshee? There are three different possibilities. Number one, is the banshee a goddess, an ancient Celtic pre-Christian deity who loved Ireland so much, who can blame her? And she decided to stick around. Some of the banshees connected to the different families have the names and attributes of goddesses. For example, the Fitzgerald family. The name of their banshee is Aine. Now, Aine in the pre-Christian times was the goddess of the sun, of summer, of fertility, both in the land, of livestock, and for the people too. In other words, all the good stuff. Other goddesses that are represented as banshees, we have Cleona, and just as a side, I got an incredible story about Cleona in the book that I don't have time for. This one I'm going to mispronounce for you. Abiel. Aoibhell. This is in County Clare. I admit my Irish pronunciation is terrible, but it's better than my Welsh pronunciation. There's the goddess Clotha, who's now a banshee. And there's one more. And I bet you folks being Llewellyn readers, I bet you know who I'm talking about. We'll see her in just a minute. Now, there are two ways that they can deliver this dark message of doom. We all know about the crying out at night, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But there's another way. Sometimes you will see a woman standing in a stream. She's maybe an old bent over hag, or she may be a young, beautiful woman, and she is washing clothes like they did in the ancient times before whirlpool. And the clothes are covered in blood, and the water beneath is turning red from the washing. Whoever's clothes those are, that is the person who's going to die. Now, possibly the most famous Irishman of all time had that same message. And I'm talking about Cuchulainn. Now, he is from the same class of heroes as the Greek Heracles. In fact, there's a lot of connection there. The biblical Samson, the Persian Rostram, the German Hildebrand. They're all over Indo-European mythology. The academics, hold your ears, solar hero. Well, Cuchulainn was meeting an opposing army, and in medieval style, he was meeting them one-on-one. Send out your champion. And when they came out, just like the Norse berserkers, a terrible battle rage would come over Cuchulainn, and he would just become like an animal, invulnerable, slashing the sword. He was unstoppable. He was a killing machine. And in the midst of this, he's walking away from one of these one-on-one contests, in which, of course, there was now one of the enemy dead. And as he walks up, who should he see but a lovely lady with long black hair? You know already who I'm talking about, don't you? This is the goddess Morrigan, the dark, deathly goddess of battle. She should be called the Morrigan, because Morrigan was not one, but three separate goddesses, such as the Greek Hecate. She was Nemain, a goddess who loved to cause panic on a battlefield, to cause the soldiers to drop their weapons and run away, fleeing for their lives, at which point they usually got killed. She was also Macha, who was the war goddess who loved to take the form of a crow and fly overhead and then come down and feast on the bodies of the slain that littered the blood-stained field. And she was also Bald. Bald is spelled B-A-D-B, but it's pronounced Bald. And she was very closely connected to Banshees. Well, here comes Cuchulainn from the battle, and here's this beautiful woman in front of him. Says, I brought you gifts. I even brought you cattle. Now, obviously, she wanted to spend a little quality time with him, but he still had the battle rage and said, I can't do anything now. I have to calm down. And he kept walking. Well, the woman, of course, was Morrigan, and she did not like being rejected. You'll find this, incidentally, in the cattle raid of Cooley. Now, she put a curse on him, and if you read the cattle raid of Cooley, you'll see the adventures. I don't have time for them now. I wish I did. But let's get right to the Banshee part. Cuchulainn and his companion, the arch-druid Cathbad, were walking to the final battle. And suddenly in a stream, they see a beautiful woman, and she is washing blood-stained armor and the clothes, and the water is turning red. And Cathbad says, look, look, little hound. Do you see whose clothes she's washing? That's yours. That means that if you go out into this battle, you're going to die. Come, we must flee right now if you want to live. Cuchulainn run away from battle to save himself. That beagle is not hunting. He says, you want to leave? Fine. No, it's back there. For me, the battle is this way. That's where I'm going. And he goes to the battlefield. He sees a hill and a standing stone on it. Now, a standing stone, if you're into ley hunting, is an ancient prehistoric menhir. It's a spiritual place of fairies, of magic. It is the fertility where the world below meets the world above. And he walks up the hill, takes off his belt, ties himself to that stone, pulls out the sword. It's showtime. And the army starts to rush towards him. And the battle rage comes over, and he is swinging that sword like crazy. I should have got a toy sword to do this. I'm having fun. And soon the ground at his feet is littered with the dead bodies of the enemy. But arrows are coming in, and many of them are striking him. Occasionally, someone with a spear will come in and pierce him, and some of the enemy, their swords, it finds the target. And bit by bit, Cuchulainn starts to slow down, gets weaker and weaker, and he's not moving. And the enemy steps back and says, okay, is he dead? Or is he suddenly going to come back to life and kill us? Well, up ahead, as a crow, is our friend Morrigan. And like every woman in the world has said at least once in her life, oh, these men, do I have to do everything myself? So she flies down and she lands on his head, and he doesn't move. And at that point, they know the great hero Cuchulainn is dead. Now, if you ever have the good fortune to be in Ireland, you might want to look at that stone where Cuchulainn died. You'll find it in County Louth, near the beautiful little village of Knockbridge. But there's so much for the Warshire type. Let's talk about the kind who cry in the night. The most famous of these was the one that appeared to Lady Anne Fanshawe in 1649. Now, Lady Fanshawe is kind of a hero to me because she was the very first person in Europe to come up with the recipe for ice cream. Now, she was in Cork visiting the castle owned by the O'Brien family. And she was in bed that night after a nice conversation and all. And suddenly she hears someone crying and wailing outside of her window. This was interesting on two counts. Count number one, she's on the second floor. Count number two, there's a moat around this castle. It was very old. So she said, okay, let's see what this is. She goes to the window. Here, floating in the air like she's underwater, is a beautiful Irish peasant girl in fairy green. And she's looking in the window, probably looking at Lady Fanshaw's clothes. I mean, hey, what the heck? Just because you've been dead for a few centuries doesn't mean you can't keep up with the latest fashion. And then all of a sudden, the lady lets out a yell, a wailing again. Then she floats back into the air, wails a third time, and vanishes. Lady Fanshawe then says, "Okay, that was interesting." She goes back to bed, but I don't think she got a lot of sleep for the rest of the night. And the next morning, she goes down to meet her host, and needless to say, she has a few questions for him. Well, the host just kind of, you see, what you saw was our Banshee. Last night, one of our family was very ill, but we knew you were coming, so we moved that person to a different part of the castle because we didn't want to interrupt your stay. We knew you wouldn't remain with us under the circumstances, and there is such a thing as Irish hospitality. Well, the story behind the Banshee is this. Years ago, centuries ago, one of the young noblemen of the O'Brien family married a peasant girl. Now, keep in mind, this is way back, and in those days, young noblemen falling in love, it was not like a Hallmark Christmas movie. You married to form an alliance or to keep a treaty intact. You did not marry for love, but this guy did. And no doubt he heard about it every day for the rest of his life. And he figured, okay, I got to take care of this. So he solved the little problem. He had his wife drowned in the aforementioned moat. Now, maybe I'm a bit old fashioned, but it just seems to me that murdering your wife is a little bit worse than marrying beneath your station. Now, what does the Banshee sound like? Once again, it's not a clear cut answer. Sometimes it sounds absolutely horrible, like fingernails on a chalkboard, like a screeching cat. In fact, that's exactly what happened in County Roscommon. And there was a brother and sister sitting in the kitchen one night, having a little snack, talking. And all of a sudden, they hear this cat screeching like crazy out in the yard. And the brother says, he says, "Watch this. This is going to be good." So he goes over to the kitchen door, opens it up, looks at the dog, and says, "Go get her, boy." And the dog looks up like, "Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what the heck's out there?" At that point, brother and sister listen a little bit more, and maybe that's not a cat. They slam the door and lock it. But it's not always a horrible sound. Sometimes it's a beautiful, gentle sound, uh, singing, wonderful singing, like you have Kirsten Flagstead out on your lawn, sometimes even with an Irish harp. This happened to the great Irish poet Dr. Keamley. His little brother was very, very ill. He was at the bedside, and there was a medical doctor there and some other men being examined. The medical doctor says, "Oh, here now, you just rest. Me and the other men, we're going to go over here and talk." Well, they go over there and talk, and as they do, they hear this beautiful singing from outside. Well, the medical doctor says, it's too far gone. There's absolutely nothing I can do. He's not going to live much longer. And they talk a little more, and one fella who's probably a stranger says, well, I gotta say, that was some beautiful singing. I've been in concert halls all around Europe. I've never heard a woman sing like that. And they look at him and they say, no, you've never heard a woman sing like that. Even now, that was no woman. That was the Banshee. At that point, Dr. Kennelly realizes, oh my goodness, and he runs back to the bed. His little brother had died. Sometimes, instead of just being heard, the Banshee is also seen. Gotta check my time real fast there. I've got so much I want to tell you folks about. Usually, she's described as being about the size of a doll, and she sits on the windowsill, which in old houses in Ireland is a lot deeper than like I would have here in America. And as she sits there, she combs her hair and she wails. There is a case of a young, beautiful banshee from the Civil War. During the potato famine, a lot of Irish had to leave their beloved homeland and they came to America. And in 1861, they got caught up in the Civil War. And they really brought credit to themselves in that fight. Both the Confederacy and the Union Army, they all had Irish regiments. And there was one young Irishman. If we're going to have a scrap, let's have a scrap. I'm not just going to join the Army, I'm joining the Marines. And that's how he found himself off the coast of South Carolina on a patrol warship. And it's in the nighttime, and he's in his hammock. And suddenly here, tap, 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 on the porthole. He said, okay, that's unusual. I mean, they're out at sea. No one should be knocking on the door. So he gets up. No one else seemed to have heard it. And he walks over to the porthole, figure out it's just a seagull. No. It's a beautiful Irish woman with long red hair, dressed in fairy green, floating in the air over the ocean. Okay. She doesn't cry out, but she points. And then she vanishes. Well, now he's got a problem. What the heck was she pointing at? Is there a Confederate warship out there loaded with cannons ready to send them to the bottom of the Atlantic? Is there a blockade runner that's going to open fire on them? But what can he do? He can't go up and tell the officer on the deck, I just saw a girl floating. No, they'll say he was dreaming, he was drinking, he's Looney Tunes. He can't wake up the other men. They would probably not like that. He goes back to the hammock, thinking any moment he's going to hear the cry, battle stations, and he would have to go running up and fight for his life. But it didn't happen. They finished the patrol. They got back to port. Next day, it's mail call. And he gets a letter. His brother had joined the Union Army. And he was now dead. What she was pointing to was maybe Gettysburg, Fredericksburg, Antietam, Chancellorsville. Either way, once again, she had pronounced death. Now, all I've had so far was the beautiful Banshees. Let's do an ugly one, shall we? This is from a 1317 battle at Llewellyn, and the one that appeared to Donald O'Brien. How am I doing on time? Oh, they're going to kill me here. Okay, let me just read a little bit of this. Her nose Large, blue, green, soft, broad, with wide nostrils from a copious stream flowed down her furrowed face, her mouth wide, prominent, of green mixed with pale color, and her upper lip with a beard and turned upward towards her nose. She had two long, slender, and sharp and green-colored teeth in her head, which were never cleansed since the day of her birth. Her tongue was sharp-pointed. Oh, yeah, she was a beauty queen, she was. Now, you remember just a moment ago, I talked about a comb. She sat sitting on the windowsill combing the hair. Well, first of all, warning, especially to young ladies out there. If you ever see a comb lying on the ground, don't pick it up. Don't touch it. Get away from it. Don't let anyone else touch it. You see, the comb is a Banshee's most favoriteest, wonderfulest object. And there is a folklore motif of men, usually men fortified with some of Ireland's more famous products, stealing the comb. Yeah, geniuses. As it usually goes, the man sees the banshee standing in a field, combing her hair and wailing, but she has her back to him. So he thinks, now this is something I can show the boys at the pub. So he sneaks up, grabs the comb, and runs home as fast as he can. And now he has a really angry banshee right behind him. And he gets home, he slams the door, locks it. The banshee comes up, pounds on the door. The whole house shakes. Dishes are falling down and breaking. And here comes the family downstairs saying, okay, why is the house shaking? And who's firing off artillery in our front yard? Look what I got. Look what I got, maybe. And she looks at him and says, oh, mother told me don't marry the moron. But I had to follow my heart. Well, now they got a problem. And it's a spiritual problem, so they usually take it to the priest, who says, oh, look, you've got to give it back to her. But whatever you do, don't touch her. You are going to have to find a way to get it to her without making any contact. So they figure, we have these iron tongs in the fireplace. That'll do the trick. So they put the iron tongs and they put it out underneath the door. And then boom! Well, the banshee has her comb back. And she has one half of the iron tongs. And the man pulls up two bits of the handle. Hey, now he's got something to show the boys at the pub. Well, look at the time, but I got 1 minute. They're going to kill me here. But I have to tell you about my favorite death messenger, the one connected to the Gormanston family. This is in County Meath of Ireland. And you know how some families have a beautiful, young, alluring banshee? Well, the death messenger for the Gormanston family was a real fox. Yeah, literally, a real fox. Ages ago, Lord Gormanston was out on a fox hunt and he saw a mother fox nursing her young. And the fox realized, okay, I'm dead. My pups are dead. I can't leave. I'm stuck. But Lord Gormanston had pity. He turned the hunt away. And the beagles are saying, oh, wait, I can smell a fox. Really, it's right there. Oh, right, you're the boss. Ever since then, there was a connection between the foxes and the Gormanston family. And when the lord of the manor was going to die, all the foxes in County Meath would come to the manor. Sometimes they'd even walk right through a hen house and not stop for a snack. And they would make a sound all night long, howling and yelping. And in the morning, they would all leave, and the Lord of the manor would be dead. This was not just in ancient times. This happened right up into historical times, including in 1940 at the terrible Battle of Dunkirk. The Foxes came and announced the death. Oh, there is so much more I would love to talk to you about. I'm sorry I couldn't get to any of the questions, but this is what happens when you're having fun. And I don't want Miss Llewellyn to come at me with a blunt object. So I want to let me get my PowerPoint up again. Beware the Banshees cry, the folklore and history of messengers of death. You can pre-order that puppy right now or wait till September 8th. But until then, thank you so very much for being with me. If you have questions, if they put this on YouTube, I'll try to answer the questions there. I want to thank Llewellyn for having that 3 margarita lunch and saying, hey, let's invite that old guy from Ohio. And I want to thank Miss Llewellyn and especially. Okay. Well, thank you again, and top